Please take your seats. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? No. There we go. If we could have everybody take their seats, we'll go ahead and kick off. This is going to be exciting. So again, welcome everybody. We've got a great crowd here as we really kick off the formal part of the 35th Annual Surface Navy Association Symposium. Kicking off as well we should with the SWO boss, Roy Kitchener. Glad to have him here. We are delighted to have so many speakers, and I got to tell you, it's across the board. Every single person that we asked is participating in here to take time out of their busy schedules to share their perspective on a wide range of topics that illuminate our theme, sharpening the competitive edge. And I know that I am really looking forward to hearing all the discussions that go on this week. The new initiatives that we are adopting for this event highlight how our surface force is rapidly adapting to an increasingly more challenging world. You know, I just think China, Russia, we've added Ukraine since last year. We still have COVID. Inflation is impacting industry and Navy across the board. It is not getting any easier at all. As always, here in the symposium itself, we have a few schedule changes last minute that'll be a little bit different than what's in your pamphlet. All updates can be found on our web-based app. please use the quick access QR code that can be found on the back of your badge. If you flip that over, you can get into the system. An important schedule change for those of you who have attended in the past, really, but last year in particular, is the annual banquet start time. So the last seminar on Thursday will take place in the conference theater, which means the pre-banquet reception kicks off at 1700, and the banquet itself will start at 1900 as opposed to 2000 like we've done in the past. See if we can get through just a little bit earlier. Speaking of the event app, at all sessions, we will post them on our website for viewing if you want to take a look at stuff after the fact until the beginning of February or so. And I think that is very useful for a lot of folks in the audience. All our questions should be submitted electronically. Virtual attendees can submit questions using the Ask a Question button on the app. Those of you who are here in person, please use the other QR code in the back of your badge to access the question portal. Please note we're in the Regency ABCD room, which makes a difference when you log in. Alternatively, you can use the address on the screen that will come up. All questions are sent to the moderator up here who will ask them, and we'll try to get through as many of them as we can during the session. Now, before I turn over the mic to our first speaker this afternoon, I'd encourage everybody to spend time with the vendors. We've got a great turnout down there. They put a tremendous amount of effort into supporting the event. It's kind of the lifeblood of all that we do. Very important. And they have got the latest cutting-edge surface war technology and impacts on operations. So each year we introduce new capabilities. This year is no exception. However, I would say, remember, while our competitive edge is clearly dependent on this cutting-edge technology, even more important, it's a result of our thoughtful development of innovative ideas on how best to employ these capabilities, both tactically and strategically. So again, I encourage all of you to think about the challenges that we have, interact with everybody over the next week, and ask questions of the true leaders of the community that we're having here for the next couple of days. Throughout the week, we're going to recognize outstanding award winners. Complete bios can be found in the program. So to kick off this session, I would like to invite Admiral Kitchener to join me on stage, already here, and we will start. So first off, the Surface Warfare Officer of the Year Award.
Hey, Corey. Good to see you. Congratulations. Good to see you. There you go. It's been a good picture.
So the Naval Surface Forces Surface Officer of the Year Award recognizes the top performer amongst their peers in warfighting excellence, tactical experience, and exemplary leadership. This year's winner, Lieutenant Commander Corey Campos, while serving in USS Princeton. Congratulations. Okay, our next award is the Ship Handler of the Year Award. The Naval Surface Forces Ship Handler of the Year Award recognizes our surface warfare professionals that excel in the art of naval ship handling. This year's winner, Lieutenant Thomas Wester, serving in USS Howard DDG 83 as the Naval Surface Force Junior Officer Ship Handler of the Year, competed against contestants from 191 crews across the Pacific and Atlantic forces. After being distinguished as one of the premier ship handlers in the Pacific Fleet, Lieutenant Wester traveled to Newport Island, where he was evaluated by both the ComNav Surf Pack and ComNav Surf Lant N7s, and the legendary Mr. Bud Weeks, for those of you who know him. He demonstrated the prowess and acute sense of seamanship expected of this elite title, and demonstrated excellence in a series of ship handling events. He achieved the top score in competition, demonstrating flawless ship handling with exceptional poise, confidence, and skill. The runner-up was Lieutenant Sangronis from USS Detroit, LCS 7. He is not able to attend today. Congratulations. Thanks, yeah, terrific. Thank you. Okay, we've got Admiral Kitchener up here already. You clearly know him. He's the SWO boss. He's a repeat guy here. Multiple commands, John Paul Jones, Higgins, Princeton, ESG-2. Currently, our SWO boss, Commander, Naval Surface Forces, Roy Kitchener. Roy, over to you.
Thanks, Rick. So that's how we're going to start. Hey, so kind of a quick sea story before I start, just because I think it's pretty good. Is this too loud? I mean, I've got mic'd up, and I'm probably got a mic here, and let's see. Okay. All right, but when we did the Ship Handler of the Year competition, you can't be a sailor and not be a little superstitious, right? I mean, you have to be. And so we were doing, giving the awards out up in Newport in the summer. And we did it outside, you know, over at the old club there. And so we're sitting out there, and Ship Handler of the Year, Lieutenant Weston, standing out there with his wife, all dressed up nicely, and some seagull came overhead and took care of business before we could give him the awards. All the photographs on Facebook, that's what those spots are. But boy, if that's not an omen of good luck for the rest of his career, I think he's going to be okay, but it was just kind of a funny story anyway. I'm sure I just embarrassed him, and you guys will track him down and reinforce that. But anyway, you know, good afternoon, everybody, and really big crowd here today. But I think more importantly, if you haven't noticed, we have over 400 sailors with us this year. You know, we actually brought them in, and we wanted to really change the focus. And so please, all of you, SNA members, industry partners, you know, active duty, retired, civilian surface force, get out there and pick their brains. And more importantly, please celebrate their service. They're out there doing it every day, making a huge difference. So as always, it's really a thrill to come out to here and be surrounded by so many who are energized by our surface force. And let me tell you, this year there is a lot to be excited about. But first, I really want to, as always, extend my thanks to Vice Admiral Rick Hunt, Rear Admiral Dave Hart, I know he's around here somewhere, Bill Erickson, who we all know dearly, and Julie Howard and the rest of the SNA staff who put this together. Year in and year out, this really is the premier event where we all come together to showcase our community. And I know it's never easy, but they always do a really good job. So thank you. You know, it's always well done. And for me personally, I always look forward to coming to SNA. You know, I look forward to it before I was the SWO boss. It's a great opportunity to talk with, you know, new friends, old shipmates, check in on all the progress made by our Navy labs, on all of you out there in industry. And now it's a real privilege to come and update all of you on our surface community. So it's remarkable that really we're able to bring so many people together, and even that extra 400 this year, but to talk about, the richness of our heritage, the talent I talked about earlier that we have here that's advancing our culture every day, and most importantly, all of our sailors that bind it together. It's my wish that you walk away from this conference understanding the great strides of our surface force and all of your unique roles in our surface enterprise. This is really a critical time for our surface force. And while we've made much progress over the years, there are still many obstacles to overcome as we prepare for those threats on the short horizon. These challenges, these obstacles, they prevent us from reaching our North Star of 75 mission-capable ships, ready on any given day. It's a topic that we'll discuss in more detail today, and I suspect throughout the week and throughout the rest of the year, because it is the single point of focus that drives all of our efforts in the surface community. Those of us in leadership, from work center supervisors to fleet commanders, program managers to CEOs, we need to act with an urgency in preparing our sailors on our ships to get them ready. If you remember nothing else from our discussion today or throughout this week, remember this: get ready. I'm not here to tell you when the conflict will come, but I am here to tell you we need to be ready. Because I do know that when it comes, it will share little in common with wars of the past. Missiles will strike farther, unmanned vessels will hunt beyond the horizon. And in the electromagnetic spectrum, many key battles will be waged. We must get ready. I recently gave a speech at the National Museum of the Surface Navy on board the battleship Iowa. If you haven't been there, you need to put that on your list of things to do. It's impossible to walk the decks of that ship, a ship built at the height of the Second World War, and not contemplate what getting ready, what being ready means. I think of the ships and the sailors who fought in that war, in the theaters that once again may host great naval battles. I ponder their bravery, their persistence, their toughness, and most importantly, their victory. The bridge between then and now remains our sailors. On countless ship visits throughout the fleet, I have seen the same grit and determination, which is a testament to tough-minded sailors who understand the thin margin between victory and defeat, is determined by how well we prepare and train before the fighting begins. It is our responsibility to continue this legacy, and to do so, we must embrace getting ready as our call to action. Getting ready was why we embarked on the campaign a year ago, a strategy that is laser-focused on generating and sustaining force readiness. It's kept us busy this past year, implementing, accelerating, and sharpening our competitive edge and the core lines contained within. These lines of effort define how we approach the challenges of surface force readiness and focus our organization as we develop the data-driven processes to produce and sustain mission-capable ships, weapon systems, and most importantly, the sailors who will use them to achieve victory. I was out in Japan a few months ago. It's a great trip. Spent a lot of time gauging readiness, measuring the morale and spirit of our forward deployed teams. Everywhere we went, in Yokosuka and Sasebo, we were really inspired by a very focused warfighting culture. And the message that I took away, that I received loud and clear, was simply this: hey, sir, we get it. We know what you expect, and we are meeting those expectations every day. Don't let us down. Get us what we need. Give us the training, the weapons, and the material readiness to take care of business. help us get ready. Along that line of thought, we heard a lot of different responses on how our force should deal with the threat and prepare for conflict. But one encounter that really stood out to me was with an individual at a Chief Petty Officer's initiation in Sasebo. It was the weakest link, and if you haven't been to that in a while, you should go do it. But I was walking around, getting to know these soon-to-be chiefs, and I came across this very strangely dressed sailor, as you can imagine. Neatly pressed whites, a clean Dixie cup cover, red and green running light sneakers, right? Some things never change. A first-class petty officer rank on one shoulder, and oddly enough, a gunnery sergeant rank on the other. I was kind of perplexed at this. So, of course, I was pretty direct, and I said, hey, went this hybrid sailor, what's going on here? What are you doing? Why are you here? Explain yourself. And it turns out Gunny, yes, Gunny McLean, was there because, and this is a quote, he told me, sir, if we're serious about the blue-green team winning the next war, then I better figure out how blue leadership thinks and acts so I can go back to my unit and make better Marines. It's pretty good, huh? So Gunny McLean, like many of our sailors and Marines, they really get it. The necessity to get ready now, build connectedness, learn all you can, and implement what you must. This is the mentality that we're establishing across our surface force. When conflict comes, we will be the vanguard, and we must act with urgency to prepare. Our North Star helps shape this resolve. 75 mission-capable ships. That's what we need, ready to fight. This goal isn't arbitrary. It's not random. It was born from our investments in data analytics, a very thorough assessment of operational requirements. This imperative for 75 drives every program and action we take. And across our force, our entire surface enterprise is aligned to reach this North Star. Now, more than ever before, we are making better informed, data-informed decisions and focusing targeted investments in equipment, spares, manning actions, and yes, scheduling, identifying the key levers to produce more mission-capable ships and to sustain them longer. I'll give you a quick example. We had a destroyer in sustainment phase, right? Coming back from deployment, they're in sustainment. It was operating and performing like a seasoned warship, but started showing downward key readiness indicators. It was a compilation of CAS reps. Human factors feedback is something we look at now. And growing equipment repairs indicated something was amiss and we needed to act. Those metrics individually would not have been enough to warrant a protected maintenance period, but viewed holistically, was exactly what we needed to do. So we worked with our operational commander, our forward type commander representatives, and our maintenance partners. And we took that shop offline and gave it the help it needed. It's now back out there doing good hard work. But maintaining the mission-capable ships we have and accelerating readiness in those that are not is the whole purpose of data-driven approach. It's how we get more ships ready. It's what it's all about. Across the force, we are now organizing better to address this demand. First, and I'm sure we are creating a surface response plan, a strategy to prioritize and allocate the ships ready for conflict. Within the type commanders, we are standing up surface maintenance operations centers, or SMOCs. They will attack the challenges of current readiness by driving down CAS reps and prioritizing repairs and parts. And in fleet concentration areas, we are establishing SURF crews, surface readiness groups, commands that will be manned, trained, and equipped to manage our ships through their maintenance and basic phase while maintaining oversight of readiness during all follow-on phases. These commands will be better positioned to support our ships and our numbered fleet commanders as we make our surface force more ready. The transformation of our readiness structure, it's going to be a journey, a course from which our surface force cannot deviate, lag, or delay. And we will need the help of our partners in industry, in Congress, and at OpNav to achieve this necessary goal. Along this path, we've already learned a tremendous amount. One of the greatest benefits of data analytics is the ability to pinpoint key factors impacting our readiness. Take, for instance, our force's ongoing concerns with underfunded sparing. We can now clearly identify the specific negative impacts to the logistics, self-sufficiency, and combat readiness, but also identify the solutions needed to address the issue. Underfunded outfitting accounts drive logistics response times and cannibalizations. As an example, in fiscal year 22, we had over 1,200 requests for parts which were cannibalized from other ships because they could not be acquired by our supply system. That's about a 50% increase over the last 3 years, and that is unacceptable. We know which systems, which ships, and what classes of ships should be prioritized and need continued, detailed, and persistent advocacy with OpNav, our systems commands, to secure the funding to address these shortfalls in both the near and the long time. That's how we get to 75, and that's how we get more ready. We're applying that same level of scrutiny and resources to confronting our manning challenges. Our service, like all others, is strained with recruiting and achieving our retention goals. We need more people to fill all our billets at sea to increase our overall readiness. We have gaps at sea, creating an increased need for temporary additional duty or TAMADs, putting sailors with critical skills on ships and missions that require them the most, regardless of the impact to readiness where they're originally assigned. Reallocating these sailors and their talent, though helpful in the short term, puts that readiness at risk and really disrupts the connectedness that is so important for building the critical combat teams as well as the material readiness of those ships. We're addressing these issues through a number of initiatives. For example, we are piloting an alternative manning model on board destroyers in the Nimitz Strike Group to increase the amount, or decrease the amount, of TAMAD sailors. Reducing this number provides an immense benefit for the ships in the maintenance phase by keeping those teams together to complete the difficult shipyard work on time while simultaneously allowing those sailors to attend critical schools and increase their personal readiness. As a learning organization, if this pilot proves its merit, we will expand it fleet-wide. Additionally, we are working to ensure the right sailors are assigned to the right platforms at the right times, building connected teams. The Surface Manning Experience, our SurfMex program, is a metric-based approach based on our sailors' experience, qualifications, and training, with the purpose of producing intelligent manning actions and providing a more level-loaded, aggregated experience space in key work centers on board ships. SurfMex analysis is defining breadth and depth of skill sets required on all our ships, set against 2 readiness thresholds, one for maintenance and basic phase, and one for deployment. We've gone through the first 7 surface ratings, and we're well on our way to reporting on the next 7. While we continue to grow smarter on allocating the manpower we have, this will not solve the problem of gaps at sea. We must commit to funding the full requirement. Concurrent with this necessity is the need to expand our training to meet the requisites of an increasingly complex fleet. We cannot rely on outdated training environments or on-the-job training to produce the knowledge and wherewithal needed for significant readiness growth. At its sessions and in the fleet, our sailors do now receive higher quality watch station training with their teams to solve the challenges they'll face at sea. Investments in the surface training advanced virtual environment or STAVE as we all have come to know it as, remain a core component of this effort. And since 2013, we've invested over $5.5 billion in courseware, trainers, and simulators, and we will continue that trajectory. On our ships, we're continuing to update network architecture to allow our sailors to exercise the full breadth of the systems at their disposal. And as ready, relevant learning begins to take hold and we roll out our first courses, we're doing a better job at targeting the most important tasks newest sessions are expected to perform in their first duty station. We are aligned to deliver a more confident and focused sailor ready to perform immediately. And I would be remiss if I did not include a discussion and talk about the incredible impact that Captain Paul Rinn, who passed away last year, had on the conduct and philosophy of training in the Surface Navy. Paul changed the force by changing a crew, and we all benefited as a result. And Paul, we're really going to miss you in the classrooms of SWAS, but man, you'll always be with us in the fleet, and we miss you. Lastly, on the topic of training, I really want to discuss our warfare tactics instructors, a program I remain incredibly passionate about. And to start, I'd really like to take a moment to recognize all the WTIs here today. If you're a WTI, stand up and be recognized. Come on, you guys told me you're coming over. Thanks, team. Please take your seats. You know, I had the opportunity to attend their conference on Monday, and I am continually impressed by their tactical knowledge, dedication, commitment to advancing our training and warfighting culture, and all the really hard questions they ask me. The creation of the Surface and Mine Warfare Development Center, or Warfighting Development Center, and the first generation of WTIs continues to transform our surface community. They are leading our force as we outthink, outdesign, and outperform our adversaries. On shore, they're directing our waterfront tactical symposiums, teaching our sailors in schoolhouses, and training our shipmates underway through surface warfare advanced tactical training on our Comp-2Xs. At sea, they are leading ships, sailors, divisions, and departments in advanced tactical instruction, passing on their knowledge to advance our lethality many times over. They are briefing and instructing our senior naval leaders and reshaping the way our surface Navy is positioning to fight. With advancements in the SM-6 family of missiles and the introduction of Maritime Strike Tomahawk, WTIs will continue to lead the way, defining how we use new weapons and take them on the offensive. And as we introduce new ships and platforms, they will drive the development of fully informed tactics and techniques to best employ our systems and weapons of the future. We understand we don't have a monopoly on talent by virtue of rank, and we are empowering the brilliant minds of these professionals at all levels within the force. The actions we're taking to sharpen our competitive edge, raise readiness, and increase our warfighting prowess deserves a future force that can capitalize on these initiatives. Platforms like the Constellation-class frigate, agile, multi-mission ships capable of operations in both blue water and the littoral environments. They're going to provide increased combat capability forward. We're also introducing greater lethality and capability to the Zumwalt-class destroyers that will be further strengthened through the installation of conventional prompt strike. And as we demonstrated through Zumwalt's operations in the Western Pacific, these ships have a critical role in the future fleet architecture. The Zumwalt's upgrade will be preceded by the commissioning of the first Flight 3 DDG, USS Jack H. Lucas. This ship represents a massive leap in air defense capabilities with both the SPY-6 radar and Aegis Baseline 10. The LPD fleet, LPD-2, lead ship, USS Harrisburg's keel has been laid, and the enhanced capabilities of this class improves the amphibious fleet as our LSDs approach the end of service. All of these platforms, along with investments in the advanced systems, represent our strategy both to adapt and improve the capabilities of our force long into the years ahead. They are but another way the surface force is getting ready. It is our single greatest imperative. So this is my charge to all of us, to everyone in this room, because we all deeply care about our nation's surface Navy. Our industrial partners delivering systems, weapons, and training, our government civilians, service members, and contractors in the program offices who keep our programs funded, on schedule, and supported. And of course, our sailors operating and improving and employing our weapon systems to deter, dissuade, and defeat our adversaries. You know, the Navy I joined almost 40 years ago shares few similarities from that which sails before us today. It had many ships and was driven by a common threat, the Soviet Union. On my first ship, which was an old Farragut-class destroyer, our readiness and training were spotty, and that's being nice. We didn't have TAOs. We didn't have battle orders. Heck, I can remember when the first personal computers came aboard. Those things would come, but only after we experienced a community-jolting event, the attack on USS Stark. Back then, though, even after that, it fell to an enthusiastic Lieutenant JG to write battle orders. We mitigated the difficult task of sustaining readiness by relying on the proficiency of our sailors and the experience of their supervisors. We're also fortunate enough to have resources on board to work through the majority of our problems. Today, we don't have the same resources or the size that we had back then, but we are, once again, galvanized by a common threat. And so we must approach that old problem with a new mindset. We must use today's tools to maintain our tactical advantage. Today, our ships are more capable and more complex. Today, our training is more immersive and more robust. And today, our sailors are smarter, more innovative, and more adaptable than we were, and we were pretty damn good. So are we more ready today as a surface force than we were 10, 20, or even 40 years ago? You bet we are. And we're going to get more ready because of all of you here in this room, in this force. So let's get ready. And thank you. And I look forward to all your questions.
Great introduction. Let me start by going back and raising some of the questions on people, on leadership development. What are your thoughts on where we need to go? So I know we've just done a ton in the last decade on simulators. In discussions with you, you've raised even beyond that, what we can do with some of that capability.
Yeah. I think a couple of things. I think, we look at, because one of the things for retention, right, is people want to be valued. They want to be valued as a professional. And so one of the things I thought we did a really good job of, in the last decade was the Mariner Skills Training. It's a very robust continuum from ensign to captain. We've been looking at doing the same thing on the tactical side so that we're creating tacticians at every level. And matter of fact, we were just discussing some of those things this week. And then how do we measure those things is sort of a really important initiative we have going. And then to your point, one of the things we've spent a lot of time on, and actually the whole Navy has, but in the surface force I can speak specifically of how do you develop leaders, right? I would tell you that our enlisted leadership development, we don't have really much anymore in professional courses, and we're trying to bring them back. And then on our ensigns through captain, there really hasn't been much there other than, you may be blessed with a great mentor who teaches you how to do things, and there are certain things we do in the schools. But one thing we embarked on was this leadership assessment program. And, we brought in, other communities have done it, SEALs have done it. I think every community now has completed sort of a pilot. For our case, you bring in some operational psychologists, and they sort of go through a profile of people, and then you sort of interview them, and you going into the interview knowing what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then assessing, okay, now what do we do with them? Now we know this is how this person's going to perform. Do you go back and give them some coaching and some mentoring? And so we've looked at it not only from a senior officer perspective, but also from our ensigns to our department heads. And so I think the sense is that we're going to make a continuum of this, and the people that need it, they'll constantly be coached. They'll have a mentoring thing. There'll be courses, be managed at the TICOM level. And then, we started thinking, is this something we want to include in how we slate people to ships, how we put triads together? There's some powerful things to it, and some of it we're still trying to sort out. But in the end, I think if you talk to our junior officers, and I spend a lot of time doing that, they'll talk about, wanting to be developed, the coaching, the mentoring, and I think that's what it is. Now what we can't do is do this leadership development and say, okay, all of you on this side of the line, you're good. The rest of you, we're done with you. It's got to be kind of a developmental thing. So we got to develop a continuum, and we'll be looking at that a little bit more this year and rolling out some things. Admiral McLean did the department heads, and I did a group of major commanders and some others. And it is fascinating what you learn, once you get that profile. The thing we haven't really done, to be fair, that I thought was a little bit of a shortfall is we haven't really come up with a way to evaluate people under stress before they get to their ships. And as we all know, when we put people under stress, some of them rise to the occasion, and some of them really are challenged by it. And it's manifested in different ways. And we need to make sure we understand who those people are and develop them beyond that for that. So that's another big challenge for us, is finding some crucible to run them through before that.
Yeah, terrific. A question for you, and I really applaud the fact that we've got the Whitties here today, is, I think the interaction at SNA is important, and I know what you're doing in the greater D.C. area, kind of re-bluing them, if you will, is really critical also. Question for you is, that's my view, unless I'm misunderstanding, is that's combat systems fighting the ship. What are we doing on the sustainment side, on maintenance, on the engineering piece? We got to get there and stay there.
Yeah. That's right. You got to have the people in the readiness in order to take the fight.
So is there a similar program, or are we looking at developing something?
Yeah, we are. We've actually, we were talking about it the other day. I went to, if you haven't been down there, I tell everybody I talk to in the community, down to Orlando to look at the models and simulation stuff they do down there. And I was really impressed because that's, one of the things we're trying to figure out as we get more ready and we deep dive some of these issues is technical proficiency across the force. We've invested in all these simulators, and some of them are really good. Are we getting what we need out of them? And are we giving them the time to do that? And so that was one thing I was looking at. What are some? I think we have the right tools. It's now getting them into the right places in the RMCs. We were just talking yesterday on getting some of these systems on board ships so that, before you take apart, spy radar, you can go through all the maintenance virtually while you're on board. And so, those are some of the things. And then particularly where my focus has been in the last 3 to 6 months is how are we doing at our accession training? We have really good training on the waterfront. And when you go back to Dahlgren and some of these systems, and now I'm kind of focused on, okay, what are we doing at Great Lakes? Should we continue to do our training there? Should we move it to the waterfront? And so I think that's sort of, you're going to see a lot of focus on that here in the next 6 to 7 months.
Very good. A question coming in goes to, it's from Michael Trent. Years ago, I used to evaluate the performance of TAOs and their watch teams during fleet exercises. I have frequently witnessed variance in the knowledge and the competence levels between watch teams, even on the same ship. Today, do we recognize and employ top guns of the surface force to train others? And do we use our best teams to train other teams to kind of raise the bar? Is that
that is the objective. You know, sometimes I'll get asked, you know, hey, this WTI thing is really good. Why don't we train everybody to that same level? And well, that's what we're going to do, but you can't train. You got to have a cadre of experts who understand that, right? And that is the WTI model. They're immersed in it. They understand it. They're taught how to train it. They're taught how to do the debriefs and all that. And then they come in and train our teams. I do think, you know, at the level they're doing, and we've been careful because it's like, okay, there's a synergy between ATG, who's training our basic phase, and then over to the WTIs who are there at our advanced phase, where they're, you know, now doing integrated operations. And there's a good overlap there that we're building between those two teams. But we got to stick with that cadre. We're going to put a lot of emphasis on improving enlisted warfighting capability and tactical capability through some schools and things that we're coming up with. But the Witties remain, you know, they're going to be the core of how we drive our lethality. I mean, it's not just shipboard training either. These guys are writing, you know, the SAG tactics and how we're going to do distributed maritime operations and the Pacific warfighting design. I mean, that's huge efforts, and it's really impressive, you know. And we've got to, as a community, start to understand that. I'll go to DDGCOs sometimes and say, hey, so what do you think about DMO? You know, and they go, you know, sir, we've been doing DMO forever. It's like, no, we haven't. This is fundamentally different than the way we have fought our Navy in decades. And that education starts with them, and then we've got to bring that to the waterfront that we've been really focused on.
Fit-filled. Are numbers okay on that metric that I used to live with?
No, we're not okay. I think I talked about that in my speech. We have, you know, we're challenged to meet the 92, 95 numbers. You know, if you get into the details, I talked about a Manning pilot for Nimitz. That was to get away from 92, 95. That was to say, because we're always chasing the denominator, right? And so what we said was, hey, let's go in and look hard at NECs and what we really need. And that's, you know, but you know, whenever I say this, I go, no, I'm not suggesting we reduce manning. I'm suggesting we, you know, make sure we have what we have, we utilize it the right way. But the reality is we need to buy more people. And I think right now we're committed to buying more people. We're just having a hard time recruiting. And so it's a little bit of an irony.
Interesting. Let me go one more in the people, and that goes to human factors engineering.
Yeah.
So making sure we design properly to make things kind of fit with where the younger generations have been brought up. So they grow up on video games. Why don't we do more of that kind of human factors? Because they'll figure that out instantly. It cuts down on training. You could probably do more universal, you know, commonality.
I think we have. I think if you look at bridge designs and things as we work on new FFG and some of the other things, we're using a lot of that kind of thought process. You know, one of the big investments we've made in the surface force, but both Atlantic and Pacific, is the human factors piece. You know, and I think the next step is we have our own kind of lab that we do, like both the other communities have. Submariners, aviators do that, and so we're looking to kind of stand that up to understand things. But you're right. I mean, I always use the example. It's really frustrating. I think that bridge between, you know, our generation and the young generation coming in. And even though all of you are probably the same way now, that phone we have that you all have in your pocket that's hopefully turned off is these sailors today, that's their whole life, right? That's how they do everything. That's how they have been brought up to do everything. They come aboard our ships. What do you do with that, right? You leave it at the bow and you can't turn it on. You can't even use it. And so we need to sort of understand, you know, and that's a call to action probably for everybody. How do we, you know, continue to develop our internal infrastructure on ships, our IT infrastructure that enables everybody. That is probably one of the biggest frustrating things if you ask some of these young officers over here, all right, how many computers do you share? You know, is it 1 to 10, 1 to 20? It's not very good, and we need to do better at that. You know, if you look at, to your point, what everybody's used to having, we could be better.
Well, let me shift back to readiness. I love the North Star, the 75 of 164, all that kind of stuff. Going to be very difficult. How are you, and I say this because of the audience here, right? How are you reaching out to industry to share that vision and find best practices and maybe do some of the maintenance, CMAVs, things like that differently?
Yeah.
You know, there's things that work, there's things that maybe don't work as well. Your thoughts on data evaluation of
I think, you know, one of the, you know, we're clearly challenging ourselves, and there's some accountability here that's going to be on, you know, primarily on me, but all of us really, is that okay, now we understand where we are. How do we get to the next level? You know, we continue to drive in with the P2P process on how do we finish our availabilities on time, because that's a big driver, right? That gives us more ships. We've kind of calculated through the data that 600 days of delayed maintenance equals 1 mission-capable ship. And so, hey, if we can reduce that, we get more ships. It's looking at all the pesto pillars, if you will. Okay, if I have this many mission-capable, then now what do I need to do to get them full mission capability? So it is a challenge. I think 6-week CMAVs we're looking at, the sparing, making sure it's given us really good insights into, you know, I'll give you an example that's a pretty good one is, you know, LCS has CRAM on board, right? So do DDGs in the Eastern Mediterranean, right over there in 6th Fleet. We are having a horrific time keeping our CRAMs up on the LCS. And so one day I was just like, hey, you know, what's the difference between this one and the DDGs? And it came down to having the parts on board, quite frankly, and the right parts on board, as many of these things do. And so now understanding, you know, what are the parts we need to buy and where do we need to put them? And yeah, pucks and forward positioning things is great, but quite frankly, if they're not on the ships, it's not going to work, right? In order to stay in the fight, to your earlier point, you got to have everything there. And then getting at the sailor proficiency. We talked about that. Training is a huge piece of 75, right? How do I keep them ready? How do I keep them up? So there's a lot of factors here. And that's what I think is kind of so neat about it is everything we do should drive towards that goal, you know? And I don't know, maybe we don't, maybe we never achieve it, but boy, we better try. And it's gonna drive a lot of things, so.
What are the related, you know, key topics of as we look at the Western Pacifics is maybe combat repair, surge capability. How do we manage? How do we interact with the repair side of industry? To not be in competition with what they're doing, but to partner with them and still enhance the capacity.
I think the repair side is really important. I gave an example talking to a group earlier today that you know, we just had a meeting with industry out in San Diego. And had the big shipyards come in, the ship repair folks. And, you know, one of the things I sort of laid out to them, some of the things I'm talking to all of you about, our surface response plan, how do we get to this 75, what I need them to do, as well as some tactical things. But one of the things I asked them, I said, hey, this year we'd like to do a pilot on pulling a ship out of deep maintenance quickly to see how we could do it and what it would take, whether it's is it a money thing? Is it a people thing? Is it a parts thing? And to learn so that if this happens, then we can understand how to do it. You know, similar initiatives we've done to see where our capacity and capability is in loading out ordnance on ships at our weapon stations, you know, so we don't have them all lining up when we had to go. It's, you know, traditionally we spend, you know, anywhere from 4 to 5 days loading out a destroyer. And it was like, hey, that's you know, what's our push goal here? And so we've done it in a much shorter time frame, and we found the weak points, and now we've invested in them, or we're investing in them. So a lot of this again is a journey, and we got to get the right stuff, and we got to put it in the right place.
Let me shift completely and jump into Ukraine and I'll do that from a lessons learned.
Yeah.
So is that something the Whitties are looking at? Right
They
now?
are. They are. There's a lot of good lessons, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit at the when I said, hey, we're out thinking and out designing, and I think if you look at Ukraine, and there's people in here more qualified to talk about it, like Admiral Black over there, but I would say that that's what they're doing, right? They're using tactical gear to get strategic outcomes by thinking and adapting to what the enemy is doing. And I think that's what our WTIs are doing all the time right now. Okay, we know what the threat is. Here's what we have now, and here's how we can use what we have now to prevail. And then here's what we think we should have to keep the advantage going into the future. So it's really kind of a dynamic. We do the WARCOM now in the summer combined, where we get together with aviation, surface. We even had some submariners there last year. On how would we do this fight? How do we use each other's strengths and weaknesses? Because it truly is a joint fight, right? And you don't care where the fires are coming from. You just better have enough. And then how do you coordinate it? And every year where I think we had something boxed, it's like, maybe not so, but we have a different approach that the team comes up with, because you've got to have what you have now, and then you've got to continue to stay ahead of that. And that's what the WTIs, I think, are giving us right now.
So I think I just read an article that Iran is, for example, using some of their commercial ships and loading them out with small unmans.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that? Are we looking far enough forward to dealing with maybe 100 little things flying around the ship as opposed to
We are.
bigger, smaller?
Yeah, we consistently look at the asymmetric things. Some of them are works in progress. Some of them we think we have a solution, but we definitely need to continue to think about it and to adjust. And quite frankly, we're doing the same types of things, right? I mean, so it's as we try to figure out what our advantages are. But Lauren Selby's a good one to talk about over at ONR about that. He's got a lot of good stuff that he's working on. But yeah, it is something we think about and plot against.
Very good. I'm getting a lot of questions coming in on people things.
It's probably from all those fleet sailors.
It probably is. So here's one. You mentioned lack of stress training. People prior to deployments, how will tactics best stress us in the training piece as we kind of develop the future force?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of different topics or points here, right? What I was kind of talking about on the leadership development piece was, okay, how do I train individuals to be calm under chaos, right? And not turn into some kind of monster that creates a problem where none exists. And then I think the team training and the pressure we put our teams on through the crucible of like a Comp 2X is pretty darn good. The training that we do before our strike groups or ARGs deploy, that is designed to put stress on the team, right? And it does a good job of it. And we get really good feedback on that. I think it's this we continue to teach people, individuals, how to deal with stress, but we still don't have what I consider some kind of continuum, and that's where I think we need to invest is on the individual.
And you mentioned trying to get data metrics on people.
We do.
Perhaps.
We have a couple of initiatives in the fleet that we've done that the human factors guys we do. SEALs are really good about this, or the SOF guys on, hey, what's your body battery say, and measuring. So we've run a couple of trials on a few ships where they have wearables, these Oura rings or a Fitbit, and we get the data, and then we do targeted surveys. The data we get back is actually pretty good. It's just depending on where you sit. When I read it as a type commander, I'm like, well, that's pretty good. That's actually not a bad, day on a ship, because it's showing you what their patterns of sleep are, when they're working, how much time they have to go work out. Now, setting our standards from there is what we need to do, because sailors will tell you, well, that isn't good enough, sir. It's like, okay. So, and that's what the human factors guys will tell us. But yeah, there's some really neat things we're doing. I was on a Japanese ship when I was in Japan on that trip to look at some of these things, brand new ship, and they had the software already developed and on the ship to match up with their wearables to monitor not only where people were, but what they were doing, and then collecting. And then the idea, right, eventually is you take this data and it helps you build a watch bill and monitor your watch bill and making sure you're managing fatigue. And that's where we want to go. And we're getting closer, but it's a challenge. I think we do better than we did 5 years ago, but we're not where we need to be.
A question on retention.
Yeah.
So recruiting, retention, kind of related, very directly. What are you assessing the dissatisfiers that are? We read about some of the yard periods going on. I think
Yep.
GW in the news.
Yep.
That sort of thing. Is one of the suggestions that comes up, or question particularly that comes up, is can we reduce the crew during a yard period? I know we've looked at that in the past, but it's those kind of things that take down some of the dissatisfiers, maybe put those people into training programs like you suggest.
Yeah.
But do we have the flexibility? Are we thinking about doing that?
We are. We're thinking a lot about that. When we look at, like, for example, if Zumwalt goes into, along to get CPS and to do some holistics, we're trying to look right now is, hey, do I bring in a cadre of EDOs, of engineering duty officers? I mean, you want to learn how ships work and do something like that now. So that's one area. We've looked at it in other situations. Okay, can we just go down to a caretaker crew? What does that look like? But, there's a little risk in that too. And that's what we're trying to figure out. But there are other things we're looking at from a quality of service. And, I think one of the things our JOs have told us is, and we've sort of boxed them, and some of their tour lengths just based on, the rationale we had coming out of the CR, where we wanted to say, hey, we need to get more water under the keel, so we have to do these things. And we've kind of worked through that, and I think that was done for all the right reasons at the right time. Now we have a lot of simulation time, and so we've figured out, okay, what is the mean low water on that? What do you need to have to be proficient? Yep. What is the amount that you can carry over to say, hey, that does equal water under the keel? And we've got a lot of data and a lot of statistics on that, and so we're factoring that in. So, can a division officer, do maybe a 130, one single longer tour, like 30 months, like I did when I was an ensign, and if you meet these requirements, maybe you just go. You still have to do our professional requirements of going to OD Phase 2 and the Advanced Division Officer course, but then maybe you go to shore duty after that.
So now you raised the question that I have to ask, and
Yeah.
that goes back to career progression, surface warfare, officer in particular.
Yeah.
Any changes to where we've evolved to? Or
yeah, we're constantly, one thing I've learned, and, this is good advice from a lot of people when I came into the job and talking to, former CNPs and everybody, is you just got to be really careful how you turn the dials, right? Because if you go too fast, then you end up, your department and then ends up doing a 5-year department head tour, right? Not that happened to me, but it was, and so there's a lot of good things we can do, but I think we just need to kind of do, make some change, assess, did it work? And okay, can we do a little bit more? I think we've worked really hard to reduce the number of ensigns on ships, and we have dropped that number, still at an unacceptable level, and give people more time. And through some innovative things, and maybe that'll help us capture the best talent we want as well, right? I mean, that's the other thing. And we discussed it yesterday a little bit, or maybe this morning it was, but we're also thinking, is there a way we can have some kind of selection criteria? We're the only community that has not done that. And maybe it's time to start doing that, and maybe that'll help us with retention.
So would that go along the lines perhaps of a British model for engineering combat systems?
No, not really. And we did have Admiral Busby, and I think he's here. I saw him earlier, and he's done some really good work. And we asked him to kind of go look at specialization and credentialing, so that we get credit for the things we do, because that was another issue that people asked us to look at. And he's come up with some pretty good ideas. I'll be honest with you, that's kind of my next target after this SNA, is to dig into that and say, okay, there's some good stuff here. Which ones do we want to do? Which ones don't we want to do? Because there are some, we can be better the way we manage our talent.
Another question comes up. It goes to the North Star 75. What's the next visionary thing beyond that? Is that the goal post, or is that a step towards?
Right now, that's our initial stretch goal that we think would give us, help us identify some of the key things we need to get better at to get us to full mission capable, right? Some of these are bigger Navy issues too, like, fleet commanders will ask me, well, why just mission capable, right? Why not full mission? That's really the objective here, isn't it? Well, yeah, it is, but I also need some tool to help us manage readiness in the short term. What ships are available for sustainment? We've got homeland defense threats. How do I keep those ready? How do I balance it so that, these ones can go do that mission, but you can't have them all. I need these ones to make them ready, and so that we're not burning everything up before we need it. And so what I like about the 75 and the analytics we do and the dashboard we maintain is it really kind of helps us, okay, I can have these now, you can have these 2 later in about 10 days, and then I'm going to bring that one back and do some work on that one. Where before, we have just, okay, what does it take? It's all or nothing. And we just cannot do that. We're not building ships fast enough, right?
Another question goes to, what can we in industry do to help? 3D printing, for example, comes up.
Yeah.
As something there. Is that?
We put I know Brendan did one on the East Coast, and then we stole one from Monterey and put it on. We wanted to put it on. So here's one that, probably we all can, a good lesson for all of us. So I wanted to put this metal, 3D printer on one of our big decks, because we thought, okay, we can make parts. When I was stationed in Europe, I was at this field exercise. There were some Marines out there, and they had some drones, and they were sending, the blueprints to make parts over SIPRNet into the field, making the part, putting them in the drone, and flying it. That's where we need to go, right? Now, there's a lot of challenges there, but we've done it. We've done it at a more rudimentary level. And so that's some things we need to do. So we get this metal one, and I want to put it on, and I'm talking to my, NAVC brethren and whatever program office it is. Well, hey, sir, I don't know. There's a lot of explosive gases. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of explosive stuff on ships. And we need to kind of work our way through the risk. And so we need to be, very methodical about, all right, what does it mean? I mean, quite frankly, me or the numbered fleet commanders, they own that risk, right? Tell us how we can do it, and we'll understand it and figure out. But if we truly want to experiment and move ahead, that's kind of how we need to think of things. And so we learned a lot using this 3D printer, and then making sure we have the people that come with us to show the training. But there is a lot of capability. The other ones we learned. We did a salvage repair. We did went through a salvage contract to work on a ship out in Westpac that we took offline, and we didn't want to use the existing infrastructure because they had enough work to do. So we brought in this team. They brought in these tools to move stuff around and do assessments and things like that we don't have. And it's like, well, why don't we have that stuff? We should be investing in that. Are there things that we can do? I ask industry this a lot. I don't get a lot of answers, and this is mostly from the repair guys, is, hey, what, as a Navy, if we invested in this for you, would that help you? For example, we have limited capability on flushing systems in the repair yards, whether it's lube oil or air, and God forbid we mix the two, right? And but it's limited. Do we need to invest in that? Rather than just, give them contracts and accept delays. Hey, how about if we pay for this and then you guys train it? I mean, we benefit, they benefit. There needs to be more discussion like that that we need to do.
How much interaction is there between the type commanders, I'll say both you and Admiral McLean, and NAVSEA and industry to come up with best practices that kind of meet the goals of the repair side, maybe a little bit on the construction side too, but working it together so we come up with the best product.
I think it's probably, it could always be better, right? But I do think we have a pretty robust discussion. I just think sometimes we fail to get a common lexicon, as we work through some of these issues. And sometimes when we have really good success on some smaller tactical issue, then that builds the trust, right? And then there's things, again, we just need to be ready to be bold and say, you know what, you're right, we don't need to do it that way. But that, and I'm straying way off target into like contracting land where I'll get in a lot of trouble. But there are some things that we just need to be willing to, take some risk, or, I'm of the mind that we should just incentivize industry to do things. Penalty stuff doesn't work so well.
Another spin. It keeps on going to the repair stuff here.
It's a running dialogue.
This goes to the reserve community.
Oh, yeah.
So are we looking at how, we've done this differently. I did this as an XO in a reserve 1052. What are your thoughts on being able to take the reservists with the experience that you could get on the industry side, bring them in, be able to mobilize them in times of crisis?
No, I think there's some really cool stuff going on there with, Admiral Mustin and Ted LeClaire, who's my deputy, is identifying who those people are. And then, other things, for example, like, over the last 2 years, I'm the type commander, but I also have a task force role in the Western Pacific as far as running logistics and sustainment. And we've looked at that. Hey, can we put all these, where are the people that we can integrate into that when we stand it up? And we're making a lot of headway there. So I think you're absolutely right. There's a huge area that we can fill and leverage. And we're just starting to do it. I know Ted's been putting in a lot of time, and we're getting everything realigned. And it's, I think you'll see some more of that over the next years.
This may be a little bit out of your area, but I'm going to say presence forward.
Yeah.
So we've seen, the request or the direction to add 2 more ships to Rhoda.
Correct.
Some people are talking about maybe do the same thing in the Western Pacific. Singapore comes up as a potential location. Any thoughts on how we do that, how we do the manning piece? Or
Yeah, I mean, again, it sort of fits into the 75 rubric, right? If you want to do that, you can't do it just halfway. One of the things we're sort of trying to understand is, with LCS, we did multiple crews. That gives you more presence. It just didn't necessarily work out so well. So we're working to go back to, okay, how do we do this? 75 puts illumination on it. Do you get closer to the fight? We've looked at options at mid-pack, like we used to. Do you operate SAGs out of there? And these are just things that we look at all the time. How do you put ships in Singapore? Is there anywhere else to put them? Where do you repair the ships? And so I think there's always a strong, mental exercise going on. And as we try and we experiment a little on how do we get more ships, west of the international date line? How much more combat power? How long can it be there without breaking the cart? And making sure we have what we need when we.
So is an alternative to some of that to utilize unmanned more?
Could be.
Are we thinking about that? So you think of the adjunct magazine or whatever, to support. Maybe it's a mothership. With
could be. I think unmanned is part of that. I mean, I think I had a little bit of a discussion on that. Some of the unmanned stuff that we do in the Pacific is we don't talk about it as much just because we don't want to, tell the bad guys what we're doing. But I do think that there is a role for unmanned in some of these presence things or some of these things we want to do. Maybe not presence is probably the wrong word, but missions that we have to do to make sure we understand what's going on. They're very much, and I know Brad's going to talk about some of that, what he's doing. But absolutely. It's. I don't know if I'd call it presence, though. That's the only thing I'd say.
Fair.
Yeah.
it's going to be a new world, I think,
Yeah,
out there.
it's
on how
more
we do
of
that.
it's more of keeping us informed, right? Yeah.
Let's see here. I am going to go again. It's probably a global question on impact of how we sustain that presence forward. What it takes to
Yeah.
we had the International Navy
Yep.
panel earlier today, and they talked about some of the challenges that they're going through.
Yeah.
How much are we integrating
Yeah,
in
it's a great
training
question.
and workups, and are we tapping into our allies to the extent that we ought to?
I think we are. There's two from an operational tactical. Yeah, we're doing it all the time. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to run a SWAT out in Okinawa, and I think we got a Japanese ship, an Australian ship, and these guys will correct me if I'm wrong. But we're doing that all the time. In the Pacific, the Japanese are there with us, helping us carry some of that burden that we have out there on presence, as you talked. I think one of the areas, and this sort of goes back to your industry question, and I got this question from an international officer the other day, or yesterday, I guess it was, at the WTI thing, because we have a bunch of those folks with us at SMITIC, and it was, how do we do more of, how can we help you, sir, with your parts problem? How can we, are there more common things and systems we can have so that, we have a production line here and we can give you the widgets we need? I do think there should be more done in that area.
Yeah, that actually came up this morning.
Yeah,
as
it's a
matter
great
of fact.
question, and I took it for action. And the other one that we're doing as part of the 504 stuff, or some of my, tasking that Admiral Paparo has given me is, hey, how do we do more ship repair in other countries, and how do we do more ships from other countries repair in our ports? And so we're digging into that and actually scheduling and putting it into the, the lines. Okay, you're going to do this one this quarter here, this one there, and programming it so that we actually are getting it done and learning. And some of it's, again, been sort of rudimentary, but then, we're getting more and more complex as we do it. But I do think there's something to be said about, the common systems and how do we get more...
How much are we cross-pollinating officers or senior enlisted between our ships and foreign
Still
navies?
pretty good. I'm trying to think. We have a bunch of navigators and and ops guys, and there may even be some in here today. But I'm trying to think. And whenever I'd say out of every fourth ship or third ship I go to, I usually run into a foreign officer. It's pretty good. So we've got pretty robust relationships. And then I've been overseas and run into U.S. officers on, foreign ships. So that's pretty good. Could probably be better, but it's. I think we're getting over the whole. It used to be the clearance stuff was really limiting to us. I think we've kind of, due to some good work, I think by a number of fleet commanders and then fleet commanders up there, we've really come up with some better policies on how to manage that.
Another JO training question.
All right.
So this goes to, you've been doing a bunch of seminars, interacting with the JOs,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Can you comment about how those went, and what are your key learning points from our young leaders?
Yeah, I think, one, I think they should hold us accountable. In somebody this week, I didn't talk about it deliberately, but somebody will talk about get real, get better. And I think that's important. But, what I tell the surface community is get real, get better is not, fixing hard problems. We all ought to be doing that anyway. I think that's what we get paid to do. And what it is about is transparency and trust and, being able to talk about the bad things, in a group like this and not on some blog or somewhere else, right, out in the open. And so one of the things I think that we sort of learned together is, one is that. Two is that they're very interested in professional development, so that's kind of driven our focus on getting better at warfighting, giving them more time. I think if you asked anybody from E1 to O10, they'd probably say, hey, we need to have more time so that we can practice warfighting or, whatever it is. But so that we spend a lot of time trying to think of that. But, you know, and then I think one of the things I try to convey back to them, and I'm not saying this is a blanket exclamation for that whole group, but we have to remember we are about building teams. We always have been, right? We're about building the winning team. And everybody has a unique role, just like everybody in this audience. And that's great that you might want to just be a navigator for your whole life, but I need you to be more than that. I need you to be the person that's backing up the captain. I need you to be the person that's backing up the department head, that's backing up your sailors in the repair locker. You got to know all those things because that's who we are, and we've always been that way. And so that kind of resonates with them. But we've got to also, you know, that transparency and trust, you got to deliver too, right, to reinforce it. And so I think that's what I like about it the most is the accountability that's kind of put on us, you know. And they'll always ask me when I, you know, my return event, hey, sir, so how's that going, you know. And sometimes you just got to be honest and say, hey, you know, we're struggling with that a little bit, but here's what we've done. But you got to keep working towards it. I tell all our sailors, you know, keep beating us up on social media. It's okay. You know, yeah, it hurts for a little bit, but at the same time, they're right. Most of the time, they're right. They're telling us about the issues we should be interested in, and shame on us if we're not getting ahead of them.
So I'm going to close with a question on what can we, the larger audience out here, do to help you across the board? I'll say in your man, train, equip, you know, kind of focus in that area.
Yeah.
So it could be recruiting, retention.
Yeah. I think, I gave a little bit of a pitch this morning on recruiting, you know, because I think it is challenging for us. I think it's been overly politicized. I think we just, you know, we need to get out to the areas that we don't traditionally go to and carry our message. And that's on me, but this group here, most of you have been in the Navy or around the Navy, you know what we do. Tell them what we really are doing. You know, this perception that we're not as good as we used to be or it's not a good place to develop, man, that couldn't be farther from the truth. And somehow we've got to, you know, get that out of the dialogue that's out there right now. And it'll change because I know everybody here will go do that. So I think that's one thing. The other thing I would ask you to do is talk to all these sailors in the room. Talk to these WTIs. I mean, they will energize you. They'll give you things to think about. And you may not have the answer right away because many times I don't. But you have to go off and do the research. And that makes us all better, I think. And but we've got to deliver. And I promise we'll continue to kind of give you some kind of qualitative assessment as we look in the rearview mirror on how we're doing with our 75 and give you some focus areas that we need to work on. Right now, it's you know, making sure we can build our spares. Some of you out there that are you know, have companies that build spares that are thinking about shutting down lines, come talk to me. You know, can't do that. You know, we got to keep it going. And it's on us to, you know, have that discussion like you were talking about earlier where, all right, what's realistic here? How do we need to do it? Because some of these things are national security imperatives, quite frankly. And if we bring them down, then it's like, okay, now my readiness, you know, index for that cruiser is going to go down to a point where I'm not sure I can safely send that team into the fight. And we don't want to be in that place. So I think that's kind of my charge to everybody here.
Great. Any final comments?
No, really, you know, I'm around for follow-up questions. I'm here through Friday. Really looking forward to it. Thursday night, you know, we changed up SNA a little bit this year. Some different formats. Brought in a lot of fleet people. And then we're going to pin some young surface warfare officers on Thursday evening at around 1700. Make sure you're there to celebrate with them on that great achievement and celebrate our culture and who we are. Looking forward to talking to everybody this week, and thanks for listening to me. Thanks.
All right.
You ever have that dream where you're flying, soaring through the sky, over stormy seas?